It kind of blows my mind how much economic activity happens around things, well, things most of us have never even heard of.
Hmm.
Take polyvinylpyrrolidone, or PVP. Sound like something straight out of a sci-fi movie, doesn't it?
It really does.
But check this out. By 2025, the global market for this, PVP, it's estimated to be worth a massive 300 and 490 million US dollars.
Yeah, it really highlights the complexity of global commerce, doesn't it? When you see the scale of some of these, well, seemingly niche markets.
Totally.
And this deep dive today is all about taking the source material you've provided us and, pulling out the most crucial and frankly fascinating insights into this PVP market.
Exactly. Our goal here is that by the end of our chat, you listening will have a really solid grasp on what's making this market tick.
Yeah.
What challenges it's facing, the key trends, how it all kind of plays out differently across the world. And get this, the market isn't just sitting still. It's projected to keep growing, potentially reaching USDC 8075.44 million by 2033. That's with an average yearly growth, a CAGR, of 6.90% starting from 2025. So it's big now and getting bigger.
Yeah, that compound annual growth rate, nearly 7%, I mean, that
Yeah.
really points towards some sustained and pretty significant expansion.
Okay, so let's get down to brass tacks then. What is PVP? Because honestly, my first thought is definitely something bubbling away in a lab beaker somewhere.
Huh, well, you're not entirely wrong there.
Okay.
PVP is also very widely known as povidone. This is what we call a synthetic polymer carrier. So essentially, it's a large molecule made in the lab
Yeah.
that can carry or bind other substances together. It's incredibly versatile, actually, and it's found its way into a huge range of applications, especially in the pharmaceutical world. Think of it as sort of a workhorse ingredient for keeping medications stable.
Stable how?
Well, either keeping them suspended properly in a liquid or, evenly mixed as a powder.
Okay, so in practical terms, what kind of medicines actually use this stuff?
Well, it often acts as a binder. So in capsules and tablets, it helps all the active ingredients and fillers stick together properly, maintain their shape.
Right.
It's also used in like flavoring liquids, syrups, and those chewable tablets that are, often easier for kids or some adults to take.
Ah, okay.
And if you've ever used one of those transdermal patches, for delivering medication through the skin,
Yeah.
PVP is often a component in the adhesive that keeps it stuck on. And even in eye drops, it can act as a film former, creating a thin layer on the eye surface.
Wow. Okay, that's a pretty diverse range of medical uses already. But I noticed in the information you shared, it's not just limited to the medicine cabinet, right?
No, absolutely not. And that's a really key part of the PVP story. It's adaptability. It just goes way beyond healthcare.
Like where?
You can find it in things like inks for printers and various imaging technologies. It's also an ingredient in some detergents and soaps. It even plays a role in lithography, that's a printing process, and in making ceramics, textiles, and maybe surprisingly, even in some electronics components.
Ceramics and electronics. Okay, that definitely wasn't on my radar for this chemical. So what's actually driving all this demand, particularly on the medication side?
Yeah, there are a couple of main factors really pushing its use in pharma. First, there's just this constant drive in the industry to develop new and more effective ways to deliver drugs into the body, better formulations, basically.
Sense.
Second, and this is more of a broader health trend, unfortunately, we're seeing an increasing number of chronic diseases globally, things like diabetes, heart conditions.
Right.
And that naturally leads to a higher demand for medications overall, and therefore for the essential ingredients like PVP that go into making them.
Okay, so pharmaceuticals are a huge piece of the puzzle, definitely. But let's circle back to those industrial uses you mentioned. What makes PVP so attractive in, say, adhesives or ceramics?
Okay, yeah. This is where its properties get really interesting. PVP has some really valuable characteristics, especially its ability to dissolve. It dissolves in both water and many organic solvents.
Ah, okay. That sounds useful.
It's incredibly useful. It makes it ideal for adhesives. I mean, everything from the sticky stuff on pressure-sensitive labels to glues that you can reactivate with water, even for bonding tricky things like metal to rubber. And those common glue sticks we all used in school.
No way. Glue sticks? Really? What makes it good for that?
It's that combination of forming strong bonds once dry and its solubility characteristics. It just works really well in those formulations.
Huh. Okay. And ceramics, what's it doing there?
In ceramics, PVP acts primarily as a binder, so it helps hold the ceramic powder particles together before they're fired in the kiln.
Right, before it gets hard.
Exactly. It can also act as a dispersant, helping keep those tiny ceramic particles evenly spread out in a liquid slurry. And It can be a viscosity modifier, basically controlling how thick or thin the mixture is, making it easier to shape or mold.
Gotcha.
And even in glass manufacturing, it can be used as a lubricant or a coating agent during production, sometimes helping to prevent scratches.
So it's really adding essential functionality at like multiple stages of making things. Now, the notes also mention something about hospital-acquired infections, HAIs. How does PVP fit into that picture?
Yeah, this is another significant driver. The growing concern about HAIs, hospital-acquired infections, is definitely boosting the need for effective disinfectants. And many of those contain PVP, often in the form of povidone iodine.
Ah, the brown stuff.
Exactly. With just this heightened awareness globally around health and hygiene and the absolute need for effective sanitization, especially in hospitals, PVP-based disinfectants are really vital for lowering infection risks.
That makes total sense. Critical in those environments. Okay, so we've got strong drivers, pharma, diverse industrial uses, hygiene. But are there any, I don't know, potential roadblocks? Anything holding back growth for the PVP market?
Yes, definitely. There are some restraints to consider. The main one that stands out is really the availability of substitute materials.
Okay, competitors.
Essentially, yes. There are other compounds out there like hydroxypropyl methylcellulose HPMC for shortened polyethylene glycol or PEG. These can sometimes be used in similar applications to PVP.
So can they do the same job just as well?
Not always.
Yeah.
They might not offer the exact same performance profile or perhaps the same level of versatility across all applications where PVP shines. However, but they can sometimes be more cost-effective. And in certain situations, maybe they have a slightly simpler regulatory pathway. So that can make them appealing alternatives in some cases, posing a bit of a challenge to PVP's growth in those specific niches.
Okay, so PVP has clear strengths, but there are other viable options that manufacturers might choose, maybe for cost reasons, which could limit its expansion a bit.
Got it. Now let's look ahead. What about key trends shaping the market right now?
Well, one really significant trend continues to be that increasing integration of PVP in pharmaceuticals.
Okay.
We touched on the drivers, but as global demand for medicines just keeps rising, fueled by greater health awareness everywhere, so does the demand for PVP as a, critical formulation ingredient.
Right.
And the fact that major regulatory bodies like the US FDA have approved PVP for use in medicines is, of course, a massive boost to sales in that sector.
And what specifically about PVP makes it such a go-to, particularly now?
It really comes down to a beneficial package of properties. It dissolves well, as we said. It has this ability to form complexes with other molecules, which can improve drug stability or delivery. It has strong bonding capacity for tablets.
All these make it super useful as a binder, as a coating for pills, sometimes as a co-solvent to help poorly soluble drugs dissolve better, and as a dispersion stabilizer. That last one is particularly important for keeping drugs, especially water-soluble ones, evenly distributed in a formulation, something that got even more focus post-COVID-19.
That makes sense, especially with the focus on effective delivery systems. Now, shifting gears slightly, I saw a note about organic products potentially impacting PVP growth. That seemed a bit counterintuitive.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic to watch. There's definitely this growing consumer preference, particularly noticeable in North America and Europe, for personal care products, cosmetics, that are labeled organic or natural.
Right, you see that everywhere.
Exactly. And these consumers are actively looking for things they perceive as more environmentally friendly, maybe skin-nourishing natural alternatives, stuff with fewer synthetic chemicals.
So they might shy away from something like PVP.
Potentially, yes. This shift in consumer preference could lead to maybe a slower rate of growth for PVP demand, specifically in those personal care and cosmetic sectors down the line, as brands respond to that demand for natural alternatives.
Okay, so while PVP is riding high in pharma and industrial areas, this consumer trend towards natural could be a bit of a headwind in beauty and personal care. Interesting. Okay, let's zoom out now and look at the map. How does this whole PVP market break down geographically?
Right. Globally, as we said, it's substantial USD 3,490 million estimated for 2025. Currently, North America holds the biggest slice of that pie.
The largest share.
Yeah, over 40% of the total market revenue in 2025. That translates to about $1,291 million. And the projections show pretty steady growth there, a CGR of about 5.7% between 2025 and 2033.
And what's driving that dominance in North America?
It's really a mix of things. You've got well-established pharmaceutical and food and beverage industries there. There's the reality of rising chronic diseases in the population and aging demographic overall, and also a significant consumer preference for packaged and processed foods, which, often use food-grade PVP.
Any specific country details there?
Yeah, the U.S. is the giant, obviously. Its market was valued around USD 118 million in 2025, growing at about 5.5% CAGR. Part of that is linked to U.S. consumer trends, like favoring multi-purpose skincare products where PVP might play a role.
Okay.
Canada's market is smaller, about USD 155 million, but has a slightly higher projected growth rate, 6.5% CAGR, maybe linked to its R&D strengths. And Mexico is around USD 117 million, with a 6.2% CAGR.
Okay, so North America leads the pack currently. What about Europe? How does it stack up?
Europe is also a major player. It represents over 30% of the global market. So that's a USD 112 million in 2025. And interestingly, projected to grow at a very similar rate to North America, also a 5.7% CAGR.
And key countries within Europe?
The UK, France, and Germany are the big ones mentioned. The UK market was around USD 170 million, with quite a strong 6.5% CAGR, apparently fueled by demand for those multifunctional products again.
Right.
France was about USD 93 million, slightly lower growth at 4.9% CAGR. And Germany, with its focus often on delicate applications perhaps in pharma or cosmetics, had a market of about USD 200 million and a 5.9% CAGR.
So Europe's definitely a core region. Now, where are we seeing the fastest growth, the highest CAGR?
That would definitely be the Asia-Pacific region, no question.
Okay.
Well, it accounted for maybe around 23% of the market share in 2025. That's about USD 837 million. It is projected to grow at the fastest rate by far. We're talking a CAGR of 9.7% between 2025 and 2033.
Wow, nearly 10% average annual growth. That's really impressive. What's fueling that kind of expansion over there?
It's primarily the strong and, importantly, growing pharmaceutical and cosmetic industries in major economies like China, India, and Japan.
Yeah, right.
China's market alone was estimated at over USD 350 million in 2025, with a very strong 9.2% CAGR. Huge demand there in medication, wound care, cosmetics, pretty much across the board.
And India?
India had a smaller market size initially, around USD 84 million, but it boasts an even higher projected CAGR, something like 11.6%. That's likely tied to increasing healthcare awareness and spending in its large population.
Okay, so Asia-Pacific is clearly the region to watch for future momentum in the PVP market. What about the other regions, just briefly? South America, Middle East, Africa?
Sure. South America holds maybe just over 5% of the global market. That's around USD 132 million in 2025, but with a healthy projected CAGR of 7.2%. Brazil's burgeoning healthcare sector is key there, about USD 57 million market, 7.8% CAGR. And Argentina's growth, around 8.1% CAGR, seems linked to rising personal care awareness.
Okay.
The Middle East is smaller still, maybe 2% of the market, around USD 140 million, but also growing quite fast at 7.4% CAGR. Think rising consumer enthusiasm for quality personal care in places like Saudi Arabia and the UAE, both showing CAGRs near 8%.
Yeah.
Africa holds the smallest share, about 1%, roughly USD 77 million in 2025, with a 6.6% CAGR overall. Growth there seems tied to generally increasing healthcare awareness, particularly noted in Nigeria and South Africa, which have TGRs around 7.5%.
It really is fascinating to see how those local economic factors and social trends shape the demand for something like PVP so differently around the world.
Okay, let's switch gears slightly and look at how the market itself is segmented. What are the main ways we can break down PVP?
Yeah, we can slice it a few ways. By its physical form, its grade or purity level, its specific application, and the final end-use industry.
Wait, let's start with form. Powder versus liquid.
Right. Currently, the powder form represents the largest segment, and that largely makes sense just from a practical standpoint, right? Powder is often just easier to handle, transport, and incorporate into various formulations, whether it's pharmaceuticals, food, or cosmetics.
Yeah, logistically easier. But which form is growing fastest? That would be the liquid form. Liquid PVP is seeing the most rapid growth. This seems particularly true in cosmetics, think. Hairsprays, shampoos, gels, where its film-forming and moisture-retaining properties are really valued in a liquid delivery system.
Okay.
It's also gaining traction in food and beverage, maybe as a clarifying agent or stabilizer, where a liquid addition is preferred.
Interesting. And what about the grade, like different purity levels for different uses?
Exactly. The market is segmented by grade, and the food grade segment currently holds the largest share.
Why food grade?
Primarily because PVP is widely used as a stabilizer, clarifier, and thickener in the food and beverage industry. And that industry itself is huge and expanding, driven by demand for processed foods, convenience meals, beverages.
Mm.
Plus, there are strict safety regulations, so using a designated food-grade material is essential.
Makes sense. What about other grids?
Well, the industrial grade segment is also expanding significantly. It's not the biggest share right now, but it's growing fast, fueled by all those applications we talked about earlier, adhesives, coatings, textiles, ceramics, that sort of thing.
Okay, so food grade leads, but industrial's catching up fast. What about segmenting by the specific application? You mentioned adhesives and fibers earlier.
Right, when we look purely at application, the use of PVP in fibers actually accounts for the largest share currently.
Fibers, how so?
PVP is apparently used during fiber processing to improve things like strength, durability, and how well the fibers take up dye. This is important for standard textiles, but also for non-woven materials, including some used in medical settings or hygiene products.
Ah, okay, so enhancing the fibers themselves.
Yeah, exactly. However, the adhesive segment is noted as a rapidly expanding application area. Again, thanks to PVP's really good bonding properties in all sorts of adhesives, pressure-sensitive, medical, packaging.
So fibers are the biggest use case now, but adhesives are growing really quickly. And finally, how does it break down by the end-use industry? Which sectors are the biggest customers?
Okay, so looking at the end users, the food and beverage industry currently holds the largest market share overall. They use it extensively as that stabilizer, clarifier, thickener we mentioned.
Gotcha.
However, the cosmetic sector is highlighted as a rapidly growing end-use industry. Again, driven by those film-forming and moisture-retaining qualities that are so useful in personal care products, hairstyling, skin creams, makeup, lots of things.
Okay, so F&B is the biggest customer today, but cosmetics is showing really strong growth in using PVP. Now, with a market this size, this diverse, I have to imagine it's pretty competitive. Lots of companies making this stuff.
Or absolutely. The PVP market is definitely characterized by high degree of competition. You've got a mix of big global corporations and some smaller, more regional players as well.
Any names that stand out?
Yeah, the report mentions some key companies like Ashland Global Holdings, Baxay, huge chemical companies, EP and Shokubai from Japan, and also a company called Dongying City Huan Chemical Industry from China. These big players typically have pretty broad product portfolios covering different grades and applications, plus extensive distribution networks.
Right, the global reach.
Yep.
Has there been much activity, like mergers or acquisitions, shaping this landscape recently?
Yes, a couple of examples were given that illustrate the kind of strategic moves happening. For instance, back in April 2021, Ashland acquired Schulke and Mayer's personal cares business.
Ah, Ashland again.
Yeah, clearly a strategic move for them to strengthen their position, specifically in that personal care segment, expand their consumer-facing business. And then later that year, December 2021, Vertellis acquired Jarcom Innovative LLC. That move seemed aimed at broadening both companies' range of more environmentally friendly ingredients and expanding their market reach.
So definitely seeing some strategic consolidation and companies trying to carve out stronger positions in this competitive space.
Makes sense. Well, wow, we have really covered a lot of ground on the world of polyvinylpyrrolidone today. Let's try and quickly recap the main takeaways.
Sounds good. So I think key points are, first, the sheer size of the global PVP market in 2025, around USD 3.5 billion. Second, its strong projected growth, hitting potentially over 8 billion by 2033, driven largely by its essential roles in pharmaceuticals, but also expanding industrial applications.
Right.
Third, the regional picture. North America is the current leader, but Asia-Pacific is where the fastest growth is happening. Fourth, the key segments. Powder form dominates now, but liquid is growing faster. Food grade is the biggest grade, but industrial is expanding rapidly. Fibers are the top application currently, but adhesives are coming up strong. And food and beverage is the biggest end user, but cosmetics is a major growth area.
And finally, it's a competitive market.
Definitely. Highly competitive, with major global players actively maneuvering through things like acquisitions. It's truly remarkable, isn't it, to think about this seemingly obscure ingredient playing such a critical role in so many products we use every single day, and the huge global market behind it. It really makes you wonder, what other common materials are out there hiding in plain sight with such a wide range of uses and a similarly massive yet often unnoticed economic impact. It's definitely some food for thought.